Just for Dave while we have him here captive.
I have a question.
Yes, yes, hi.
When you were showing Albert, in your travels, did you hear anything about demographic-wise, like how intuitive it is in terms of like, you know, if you buy for ethnicity or age or geo or race like that?
I use it. I mean, we've used it with clients. I mean, it is incredibly accurate at finding target audiences. Incredibly accurate. And I think the thing that our customers like about it is it's very efficient as well. It's been tested on large scale, I mean, CPG customers, and it's working extremely well. So much to the point that I sometimes don't believe the results we get with it. But it is, like a lot of things, it's a great question, and there's a deeper set of answers to that question that we could talk about if you want. In terms of bias, in terms of how you prompt a solution like that to find audiences, you can introduce bias into it. Meaning, if you've got a biased targeting strategy today, it's going to be replicated in AI. So you do need to be cautious about that. I mean, and again, I don't know what kind of business you're in or what areas you're.
I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself.
So Troy, Tina and I used to work together at American Cancer Society. I'm not representing CVS Health, that's what.
Yeah, I mean, it's all the same mistakes you can make in the real world you can make with AI. It's just so you know. So if you've got a targeting strategy that's skewing towards one particular audience and that you don't want or whatever, you've got the same issues. So you have to be smart about how you set it up. But just in terms of the fundamental, I personally think, and if there's any media people in here, don't hit me. But media buying is one of the most mundane tasks that we do in marketing and advertising, and I think it's a great application for AI, and it allows people who are strategic planners in businesses to be strategic, as opposed to getting wrapped around the axle trying to find how to cut 2 inches off a pipe, as my dad used to say.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that unfortunately is what media buyers tend to get sucked into, is finding a way to buy an ad word a little bit cheaper.
So
I do want to.
The media world gets better and better because of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So right now, every available niche that's available for interaction with me is filled.
Yes.
So if it really knew me and knew that I wasn't interested in something I bought for my wife yesterday or something I bought for myself already, advertising it to me again, if it really knew what I wanted, wouldn't it tear down the number of ads to just 2 or 3 and I'd be living a wonderful world?
You know what? I mean, I've written about this, Jeff. That's a really good point. We may end up with Jeff Channel, right? I mean, we may end up with such a highly personalized set of communications from a media perspective. I can buy Jeff. I can buy Jeff's time.
So let me challenge that, though.
But flip it.
It levels out the people that want to sell it to me anyway.
You do. You would at that point. I mean, there's an argument right now. And we're nowhere near this point yet. But your data about you and your family and what you like, what you buy, you may end up selling back that information to the audience. I mean, to the broader audience of
The control goes back to you.
It goes back to you. So you may literally end up owning your own. Think of it like your channel, where you're selling access to you and your demands, your needs, and letting other people bid on it. I mean, it could go to that extreme. It's like hyper personalization of messaging.
Here's where I push, or not push.
We're not anywhere near that, by the way.
From a technology standpoint.
I was thinking.
Yeah.
Right. Because there's all those now opt-in, share my. They're in there, but they're going to get, even more prevalent of I don't want this to be aggregated into my, Amazon actually.
Yeah.
When it first started, everything you bought went into your profile. Now it's smart enough to know that wasn't for her, that was for, because she sent it to somewhere, whatever the algorithms start to be.
If you want to learn more about that, go out and type in democratization of data, and you'll see what I mean. I mean, there's a lot of hype. I mean, it's like I said, it's nowhere near that today, but there's a lot of movement.
Interesting topic.
It's a fascinating topic, and again, it wouldn't be possible without AI, because you're basically turning the problem and looking at it from the other direction. Like, as opposed to I need to cast a net and catch you, it's you have a basket of goods that you want, and you're actually able to control what comes to you, right? It's a very different. It's turning the media world upside down.
Pretty close to that.
Amazon is, but again, Amazon. A lot of the tools that Amazon. I mean, the reason why Amazon is successful, I think everybody knows this, is they built a lot of these things from scratch. right? It is a proprietary, non-open platform. And actually now Amazon, we could have talked about this for an hour or two, is they're becoming an extremely powerful retail media network in their own right. Just like Walmart, right? They're going to end up being as big as a lot of, what I would characterize as traditional channels. So, Amazon got the head start, but a lot of what they built now, even small boy retailer can have the same type of personalization.
And can't compete with.
Right.
They're almost dependent on it.
Right. So personalization engines that they spent, literally hundreds of millions of dollars building and evolving, now, much like this device, we all have a Cray supercomputer in our pocket today for the low price of $1,000. Same thing's happening with a lot of these, what I would characterize as decision-making engines that only would be available to deep-pocketed retailers. Now the guy in the corner can have it if he wants it.
Yeah. My issue with that as it develops, or my weak spot there for me is, so me, and I buy bird food and whatever the things I constantly buy, and that becomes it's true, and that becomes who I am.
Yeah.
Right. But then what that does is it closes me off to suggestive selling or something that is completely counter. Because I'm a fairly crazy person. We're all crazy little humans, but I may like birds, but I also like hiking. I also like adventure racing. I also like. So you may know those 6 things about me, but I may have so many other sides that I aren't aware of yet.
You don't know what you don't know. Yeah.
Right, and so I get a little worried. Even with my Amazon recommendations, I'm like, I've seen this 17 times. I'm not going to buy. Stop. Eventually, I bought a pair of shoes so they'd stop retargeting me because I looked at them. Right. Put the label. I got it down. But my point is that you get caught in this loop of, I know you. Here's the same stuff. Yeah, and I'm like, I want to see something different. I want to see something that might not be. So there's an interesting...
Absolutely.
And where I think it starts to aggregate for me in my head is how much human do you take out because we're unpredictable.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I think we all got to remember is we're unpredictable. Did anybody see the movie Along Came Polly? Okay. Hey, there's a great movie called Along Came Polly. And what it is there's a guy that's a risk management person, and his whole life is spent the risk of this, the risk of that, because he sells insurance. And he has a girlfriend, and her risk is low. He's done a risk assessment on her being his girlfriend and life partner, and he meets Jennifer Aniston, who her name's Polly in the movie. She has a ferret. She's crazy. Her risk assessment is very, very, very high. She's a high risk person, but he loves her. And the reason I bring this up isn't to be romantic, although I am, is I think as we go, I'm going to be the person that's constantly going, but remember the human. We're not predictable like that. We can be informed. We can be better. We can be closer aligned. Mm-hmm. But there's always that unpredictability, I think, that will keep the human part of the equation or looped in or whatever that. I like your expression.
Human in loop, yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like that degree, right now everybody's afraid of the tsunami of the technology. But I say we don't ever forget our unique selling proposition of being unpredictable, crazy little animals.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't see that changing at all.
Right. I knew you would apply.
And to add on to that a little bit, so...
When you introduce yourself,
Yeah, Catherine Eccles, I work for Accenture, and I'm representing Accenture, so that's it.
Right. Understand.
But it's interesting, because Accenture did some research that talked about how we're not as predictable, and like all of our data and all of our insights tell you you're going to do this one thing, but you may not do that thing in this scenario, right? So hey, it may say hey, guess what? I'm really into sustainability, and I want to be recycling, blah blah blah. But in the moment, but at a particular point in time, in that moment, I may not act in that way, and I may not exhibit that behavior. And so that we're becoming a lot more situational in our in our decision making versus saying, yeah, I got all this data that says historically you've done this or you do this, and based on our algorithms and all of this stuff we know about you, you would act this way. But when the rubber meets the road and you got pressure and there's all these things happening, like I mean, we're in the middle of something, and guess what? There's no recycled bin, and guess what? I'm not going to hold this empty Coca-Cola bottle and wait till I get to a recycling bin. I'm just going to put it in the trash.
Right.
But now the data says you're a recycling bin. And so it goes back to your point, and there's still the point of situation and human, and you've got to figure out how you can't. This is why when people, AI was the big thing, everybody was concerned, AI was gonna take my job. I said, well, if you're doing a job that can be replaced by AI, you're doing the wrong job.
Right. Right.
At the end of the day, you need the human interaction to AI. And then going back to your question around, what's the predictability when it comes to ethnicity? We have all these conversations around, and to your point, data in, data out. So
Right.
your data is biased going in,
Yep.
your output is going to be biased
Yep.
coming out. And so you still need somebody in the mix to understand what's happening in those things and identify those. So I think, to your point, we can't get outside of the humanicity of, yeah, the technology enables us, but.
Did you just make that word up?
Yeah.
Humanicity?
Somebody coin it.
I did.
There's a circle.
Yeah,
on
TM.
there. You know what? I was reading last night about if the data sources are biased, AI is going to be biased.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned this a little
Yes.
bit, and the
Yeah.
thing is, the
Yeah.
pools of data have bias, and we all know that. If you Google search, doctor, you're going to get certain images that are biased.
Yep.
And so we have to do have to be careful trusting what the AI or even statistics come back with, because sometimes their sources are biased, so the answer you're going to get back is biased. You had your hand up.
Well, I was just going to make a quick point, because I was thinking of something when you were saying your comment, because I know very little about AI. But I was thinking of, like, the pharmacy interaction. You could do that pretty darn well. I mean, and as long as you're able to opt in, so that you can get a person or get a pharmacy, because think about it, it's about drug interactions, it's about everything else, all this stuff is in the computer, it's already there. It's about how often do you buy, because one problem nowadays is because if you're filling prescriptions for your family, it's like, when can you go back? Because a lot of times you don't have enough leeway. Well, what if you had the AI helping you out with that?
Mm-hmm.
And you could have the conversation, well, but I can't make it in, within that amount of time, can I don't know. It could just help you better than a person.
More accurately, yeah.
I think it
Yeah,
could.
yeah.
Pam Alvord, I
Thanks.
come at it from a brand marketing perspective, and you kind of sprinkled the brand throughout, but if
Yeah.
Dana's going to advocate for the human in it, I'm going to advocate for the brand, because without the brand, AI just becomes a race to the middle,
Yep.
where everyone can do the same thing for the same kind of people. And that prompting and the people that understand who their brand is and what the real value is to the consumer
Yep.
can really capitalize on that. And I think there could become an even greater chasm between those that understand their brand and the role it plays in someone's lives and those that don't.
Yeah. Is there a question in there?
Well, the brand part too there.
No, and I'm-
That's another really.
And I'm a brand guy too. I've always thought about brands are containers for trust. That's the way I think about it.
Ooh.
And so they, yeah.
Are we recording this?
But so you're absolutely right. And I think any kind of a branded experience that's enabled with AI, it has to. And we talked a little bit about this in our Q&A or our discussion about brand voice. I think it's going to be a marker, right? Like if all of a sudden, Walmart is talking to you like, trying to sell you De Beers diamonds or something, right? Or some kind of luxury brand, you're going to question it, right? It's not going to fit. There's going to be dissonance in it. And so I think, it is really important that the brand container that you've spent decades building, Coca-Cola, Chick-fil-A, whoever you are, that you can't violate that trust and all of a sudden go and try to pretend to be somebody else. AI will let you do that, by the way, and that's part of the challenge is you got to be careful. You got to be on your guard that the brand is, you're going to stay true to the brand essence, stay true to the messaging architecture that you've got. Again, as an optimist, I would say it's only going to help build brand equity if you do it right. Mm-hmm. If you do it wrong, it's going to, like anything else. I mean, every brand out there has had their, Goya Foods moment or whatever. I was trying to pick one that wasn't too politically sensitive, but a Bud Light moment out there, right? We've all had those Bud Light moments at some level, hopefully not that detrimental, but when you violate brand trust, which you can do with AI, it will sting, and so you do have to be mindful that, to your point, the brand is a huge part of this. Because the brand is, another way, it's a container for trust. The other thing, I'll trademark this one too, is brands are used to put people on autopilot. So when you walk in a store,
Yep.
You go to a shelf, I want to buy Crest. I don't want to buy toothpaste, I want to buy Crest. And it's, and the same thing will apply, it applies online as well as in person. And the AI will be, again, it'll either magnify that autopilot or it will take them off track, and that's just my...
It goes back to what you were saying, talk around, allow AI to amplify what you do well.
Yeah.
Versus going to try to fix the things that you don't do well, because there's a reason. So that kind of ties very much hand in hand if you want to see your brand.
Yes, exactly.
I see a hand.
Hi, I'm Bethany Harrington. Over 20 years in retail. We recently sold our startup in July, so I'm in transition at the moment. My question was around organizational design to most effectively implement some of these things and kind of cross the spectrum. I've seen, I have a good friend that's at Anthem. He is now considered their chief AI officer. And then you have other organizations that are kind of spreading it. How are you looking at the most effective organizational design to help tackle the next AI problem?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of like having the AI center of excellence or something, or the chief AI officer. I'm not even really that big a fan of like chief analytics officers, because I think so much of this stuff is woven into everything we do inside of a company. I will tell you, I am an agile bigot. Okay, if anybody does agile, you know what I mean by that. So I despise functional silos in businesses. I think everything should be done kind of in a Scrum fashion, which means that you may have your AI experts in your firm, in your retail business, and every time you're tackling a new project, like let's go figure out how we can do a better job of assortment or planning for next year's inventory management. I would want to see it be a cross-functional team that's got sole purpose is using this technology to enable some better outcome, whatever that is, as opposed to the chief AI guy or gal telling me that I've got to have, I got to go buy all these tools and then start shoving them into the organization to make them use them. I think that hierarchical kind of approach leads to bad outcomes. So like I said, tool for task. Buy stuff that enables your team to transform some aspect of the business, and put in. Hopefully everybody on the. It's also kind of a little bit of a misnomer, like, and again. I was trained as an IT person. You probably can't tell that, but I mean, so I don't want to like throw every IT person under the bus here, but to some extent, IT is woven into every function of the business. So why do we have IT departments? I mean, other than the fact we need somebody to run infrastructure for us, but really everybody, I don't care what your job is today, is IT enabled to some extent. So carving out, it just seems odd to me, right? To carve out it'd be like having the chief internet officer today, right? Wow, that would be a dumb job, right? What are you doing? Making sure we've got VPN to our networks. I mean, what's your job? I mean, that's why. And again, I think it's a great question, because it is the way our mind tends to gravitate towards. We need some center of excellence. Maybe you do. Until we get over that.
Scrum
Master. Yeah, you need a Scrum Master, but even more importantly, you need to educate everybody. So it's almost more of a training function to begin with, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and we have ours in the room, by the way.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Okay.
There he is. But
We're always really quiet in the back, sulking.
No, actually, I want to give credit, because that's what he's pulling everybody in and educating us.
Yeah.
So great job, Matt.
Your AI engineers, your lead AI guys should never be coming in telling your teams what tools to use.
Right.
It needs to be the other way around. And that's how we have it set up here, where our teams are allowed to go experiment and look at AI tools and then come to me and say, hey, I found this tool. This is the problem I'm trying to solve. Does this tool look like it would work well? Are there different data sets we could use for this? Is there a cheaper solution solve the same problem?
Yeah, exactly. Totally agree. Absolutely right.
Any other questions before we drink bourbon?
We could also drink bourbon and ask questions. Those would probably be interesting questions after a while.
I think yes.
One question.
Yes.
So how can retailer brands adopt technology like AI while also being able to experiment without breaking the trust of users or their audience? Like, is there going to be experimental with their branding?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a lot like any other technology, right? I think you want to start small, right? So maybe create a sandbox inside the company that you can play with and test stuff. Then maybe the next level is you bring in friendlies. I call them. It's like, loyalists, customers that they'll stick with you through thick and thin, and they'll tolerate the fact that you make mistakes and give you positive feedback on things that work. And then, scale it outwards, ultimately maybe rolling out in a more kind of deliberate deployment fashion, so you're not exposing your entire business to the thing at all at once. So I think it's just like any other technology transformation. It's being smart about it. You're not going to go to Vegas and put all your money on red, right? I mean, you may do that, but it's a 50-50, right? So I'd rather see you kind of think about it more deliberately. And again, I'm an agile fan, so it's small chunks. Do a sprint, create something unique, test it out, deploy it, weave it into your operations, learn from it, come back, do another one. That's the approach I would take with this. I don't know if that answered your question. I can't see your face, so you might have been, have your tongue out sticking at me.
I know, I can just see silhouettes back there. Anyone else with questions? I will leave you with one story. I was just at a location-based marketing conference, and I thought this was the coolest that I've heard so far. I'm young-ish. I thought it was the coolest story where they aggregated all the things we were just talking about. The brand, their customer data, their customer experience, and AI. So I can't remember the name of the company, but they're a delivery service, food delivery service in South America. Somebody might know it, so just yell it out if you do. What? No, but good. No, I thought this was great. So Argentina has been waiting forever to win the World Cup, right? So what they were waiting for as a country, though, was they wanted the trophy, right? The trophy wasn't in the country. They won it, but then they were waiting for the arrival of this trophy. So this delivery company used AI to figure out where the trophy was and started to track it. And then what they did is they sent a text to every customer in their database that said, your order is on the way. Well, they got all these angry texts back. I didn't order anything. Cancel my order, blah, blah, blah. And then when they opened the order tracker, it was the trophy. Leaving wherever. And the people were crying. They were, and you know how much it cost them? Nothing. So I just thought, that's such a good mix, and I think a good synergy of all the things we talked about today. Human ingenuity.
Humanicity.
Human ingenuity.
Now you got to pay Accenture for that.
Using that, making sure it's brand relevant, using the technology to its ultimate, putting the human back into it, and then keeping the customer experience. I just thought it was brilliant. As a matter of fact, in the room, there's, I was just like, that's brilliant. Out loud, I couldn't help it. But what happened was, it went from text I didn't understand, I opened it, I'm tracking the trophy, and they did a trend on the news channels that were tracking it and all of that. Number one. That brand was number one in the news and the trackers and Twitter and all the social media, and it cost them nothing. So I just wanted to put that forth, not necessarily as any kind of challenge, but it makes you stop and kind of kite string down the things we talked about today. What am I going to use it for? Does it make sense for my brand, and does it make sense for my customers? So.
Yeah, real quick.
Yes?
We did have a pretty good question in the chat.
Uh-oh.
Talking so well, I didn't want to interrupt.
That's fine.
This person said, curious about AI as a massive collector of existing data and reacting based on data collection versus AI learning from the data and then developing independent solutions.
Ooh.
As in, when will AI come up with solutions that humans see and go, wow, never thought of that? And then the person said, maybe I should get AI to phrase this question for me.
I think
Essentially, AI developing autonomous problem solving.
Aggregating, looking back.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, again, I can answer that in a couple different ways. I mean, that to some extent, for those of you that are doing predictive analytics right now, that does exist, and it's not even really AI. I mean, there are probabilistic models that we as retailers have been using for decades, quite frankly, that actually do create insight from collected data, right? So it comes up with the aha, you need to have more of this on the shelf kind of stuff that a human didn't invent, the machine predicted that, right? So I want to make a distinction between that and where I think that question was coming from, which was more of a, almost like, when will AI be able to make jokes when I'm playing poker on Tuesday nights, right? Like, based
Without
on the
being
conversation, right, without
Yeah,
being
yeah.
prompted. And I think to some extent, it's, it's already sort of happening with a couple of the large language models that everyone's familiar with ChatGPT, with Bard, where, and this is the scary part of the answer to this question, even the developers can't really track back and figure out why it came up with a specific answer or solution. It came up, it's just consumed and been trained a bunch of language data from the internet, and it predicts certain things that nobody can really track back to say, well, what was the source on that? One of the things that I like about Bing, for example, for search people, if you used, and most of us use Google, but I've started using Bing more because Bing actually has a nice feature now where it will, when you do write something, you say, write me an article about how AI is going to change the world of retail, it will come back and it will source everything for you, which I think is really important and powerful. Because as we all know, when you go, ChatGPT 3.5 is just a massive consumption of the internet up until January of 2021 or whatever it was, maybe December of 21. And I would really like to know, if it's giving me direction or giving me advice, where did you source that from? Because we all know, to the earlier question about bias, there's a lot of biased stuff on the internet, right? There's a ton of it. So if it's telling me something, I really would like to be able to track back. Long-winded answer to your question, but I think what you're going to start seeing is, for certain applications, more sourcing of how did you come up with this idea. And you may be surprised to find out that, I'm going to use the Pareto principle here, 80% of it's probably, it actually has come from someplace else. So as humans, it may look like, wow, that's a breakthrough, that's a new idea, but it may actually have come from someplace else. We just, as humans, we don't have the field of vision to see all of that. But when you source things, you might actually surface that. But there is that 20% which I'm not saying that these models are sentient or anything like that, but it's even the people that are writing the code can't explain why it came up with an answer. So,
Interesting.
and that's to be continued.
Yeah, ...
Yeah.
Bourbon.
Drink your sorrows away.
Maybe it'll be clarity.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you all for coming, for participating, listening today. Right.